Good afternoon. Hope you all are doing well. Certainly appreciate you coming out and the coverage that you provide for our team. Today marks day number 10 of preseason camp, if you count report date, and it will be practice number 8, which will be our first scrimmage. Certainly excited to perform in a game-like situation with no coaches on the field, referees, game clock, all those things, and giving the opportunity for the guys to really compete for the first time in that kind of situation. So we're excited there. Through 7 practices, I think we've seen steady strides in our understanding and execution of our scheme in all 3 phases, in offense, defense, and special teams. I've been very proud of our coaching staff and their ability to provide the information to our players in the position meetings in a very clear and concise manner. And certainly proud of our players for their ability to take the information and apply it on the field with consistent effort and an improved precision on a daily basis. I think we've had a great, you talk about our camp goals, I think we've had great competition, certainly competition individually to make ourselves better and to compete for a job, as a group to make the positions better, as a unit to make our side of the ball better, and ultimately and lastly as a team to make us better. There's been a great back and forth every single day through 7 practices, either by period or by day. It's been a great give and take offensively and defensively, and historically that's generally the sign of a pretty good football team in the upcoming fall. If you see one side of the ball getting after the other side on a consistent basis, it usually is not a good sign of balance. So we've really had a good spirited back and forth there. Another one of our camp goals is to work on situational football. So every single day we track the number of explosive plays offensively and explosive plays allowed defensively, and the same thing for turnover margin. So once again, it's been a good balance there of us meeting our goals. Offensively, we want to have 1 turnover less per practice, defensively 3 or more. And then from an explosive play perspective, we go by percentage of plays. We define an explosive run as a run of 12 or more and a pass of 15 or more. The defense wants to limit it to 10% or less of the total plays in practice, and the offense wants to get 16% or more. So we've done a real good job there and certainly worked into all other situations. I've got to 3rd down, I've got the red zone, I've hit a little bit of 2-minute work. We'll continue to do that and get a lot of those situations covered in our scrimmage today. Another one of our goals, which was new kind of from the spring, which we emphasized with the team, is our ability to handle adversity and handle prosperity and to show our emotions without being emotional. And I think that's one of the great things about our team is the guys love to compete. They wear their emotions on their sleeve, but at times I believe it can be counterproductive. And, there was, as it gets to that point in camp, there's a few dust-ups and, a few altercations, but we always talk about our practice habits being game realities. And if you're not going to fight on the field during a game, and that's going to get you sitting down, then we're certainly not going to do it in practice. But I think we've definitely improved in our ability to do that. Certainly with our strength and conditioning program, I think the guys came into camp bigger, stronger, faster, more explosive, in great shape. And Coach, they did a great job changing guys' body composition between Coach Prohl and his staff and Kelly White, our sports nutritionist, just addressing the needs of those guys to get them at their optimum playing weight. And certainly it's not because he's a fellow Yinzer or because I hired him, but I truly believe that Anthony Prohl is the best strength and conditioning coach in the country. So we're certainly very excited to have him. All right, 21 days left to camp until our first game. We need to take advantage of every opportunity. Mentally and physically, 1 rep at a time at a championship standard. We talk to our guys on a daily basis that we can't waste a rep, a drill, a play, a period, a meeting, a practice, or a day. We need to continue to make the investment and earn the right and have our actions reflect our goals. And certainly very excited for the upcoming season. It's been a very good and productive camp so far. The kids are doing a great job. The coaching staff is aligned. Everyone's pulling the rope in the same direction, and a good reason for optimism. With that being said, I'd love to take any questions.
Please raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you. Please state your name and affiliation as well. Thank you.
Coach, you mentioned David Murray Dogs Bite 24/7. You mentioned those percentages, 10 and 16. How do you arrive at those percentages?
We arrived at Penn State last year. There had just been a number, and it wasn't relative to the total number of plays that were run in the game. So sometimes it got skewed a little bit. And actually, Michael Hazel, who works for Penn State, did a bunch of research with Pro Football Focus and College Football Focus to come to a percentage of a number. And I really liked what we did there at Penn State last year and brought that along.
Brett Hudson, the Commercial Dispatch. You've got a lot of tight ends on this team.
Sure do.
Reps have to be divvied around pretty carefully. What do you and Coach Hudspeth look for in the guys that will separate themselves and eventually take the reps on game days?
I think because the tight end position is such a pivotal cog in our offensive system that they need to block like a lineman in the run game and execute like a receiver in the pass game. And when you look at guys that we're recruiting in body types, ideally you'd like a big high school ex-receiver, a guy that can, be aligned and attached to the formation and do all the things that are necessary from that perspective, but a guy you can also split out and get matched up on a linebacker or safety. So I'd say the thing that we're looking for is production in both the run game and the pass game, and the ability to create explosive plays, down the field.
Coach, different offensive system this year. Where is Nick Fitzgerald and the quarterbacks as a whole kind of in relation to your expectations as far as installation?
I think, like any position unit on the team through the course of camp, there's up days and there's down days, but there's certainly been more ups than downs. I think we're seeing a steady progress of not just, how we saw in spring ball, not just what we're doing, but why and how. And I think that's critically important at that position where, the level of precision is of the utmost importance. So I think, Nick's growth as a drop back passer is something we've been working to develop, but also his ability to be involved in team reps now, which he didn't have in spring ball. The run games, the RPOs, changing the protections, and not just Nick, but all the other guys. I think we're seeing, great growth from them, and Coach Briner's doing a good job coaching them.
Danny Smith, Strawful Daily News.
Sure.
Two-part question, Coach. Just Aries Williams, what kind of a leader have you come to see from him? And second part, what are the running backs in your offense as far as throwing the ball at? How much would you like to get them involved in the passing game?
Throwing the ball, you said? Yeah, the first part, I think he's a guy that's got a good body of work. Obviously, I believe he was close to 1,000 yards rushing last year. And Aries is a guy that he's going to lead more by example than he is vocally, and I think that's just his nature. He comes in every day, kind of punches the clock, goes to work, and lets his performance speak for himself. And I think that's something, as a guy who's played a lot of football here and earned the right to be a leader, I think he's more comfortable in the lead by example phase than the vocal part of it. And that's something we talk to the team about, the guys who are captains and guys who are leaders. There's not one blanket way to be a leader. You got to find the things that, motivate people. Some people you can, correct them in a public setting and they respond to that. Some people don't. And, there may be a guy you got to go over and put your arm around and talk to him, privately. So, I think his best way of helping us lead is through, what he does. And certainly the role of the running back in our offense as a pass catcher, I think has been pretty well documented and demonstrated last year. I think Saquon was up near 50 catches, a bunch of yards. Chase Edmonds, who's going to make his debut for the Cardinals tonight, we had at Fordham, was a guy that was up around the 30, 40 catch range. So you talk about one of the tenets of this offense being the ability to get your speed and space, and certainly with our running back position and guys that we've had over the years in this offense, it's not just about the handoffs between the tackles. It's what can we do to get them on the edge, and what can we do to get favorable matchups in the pass game.
Logan Lowry, Daily Journal.
Yeah, Logan.
You've got essentially 4.5 offensive linemen, starters returning.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that group now that you've got them in pads for a few days, and how do you feel about the depth at that spot?
I feel very good about the depth, and once again, I keep going back to the job our assistant coaches are doing, and Marcus Johnson, a guy that did it at the highest level, professionally and collegiately, and can fall back on those experiences as a player and a coach. But when you look from tackle to tackle, you see guys with size, with speed, with athleticism, with physicality. And I think that one of the best things Coach Johnson's got them doing now is playing with a demeanor, playing through the echo of the whistle. And that's kind of what's caused some of the spats between the O-line and the D-line. And when you're going against a D-line of that caliber every day, it's great to watch those guys, battle against each other. But then you look at the guys behind them, and I think, one of the luxuries we have at that position is there's some of the twos are pressing ones for playing time. So, you can't have a bad day, you can't have a bad practice, because if the guy behind you is doing well, he has an opportunity to bypass you.
Kind of a follow-up on Coach Johnson. He mentioned one of the reasons he was interested in this is because he only knew the David Cutcliffe way, and he kind of wanted to expand himself as a coach. So how much of that David Cutcliffe way has been kind of utilized within this, and how has he picked up what's being done here now?
No, I think a lot of that is reflective in Coach Johnson's demeanor, and that's, not just with him, but with the rest of our coaches. We want them to be teachers, we want them to be educators, and, doing a great job communicating with our kids, and like I said, figuring out what motivates them and the best way to get them to perform. And I think, obviously Coach Cutcliffe has had a remarkable career as a head coach and a coordinator, and anytime you can fall back on that experience, that benefits everybody. But Marcus is doing a fantastic job for us.
Ryan Haydad, Super Talk, Mississippi. With the new redshirt rule in place, are you seeing a different level of effort from true freshmen than you have in previous camps?
They're giving effort, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's changed. I'd say they have probably a heightened awareness with the rule now that there's the opportunity for them to play in 4 contests without utilizing a year of eligibility. And I think it goes more along the lines of, our plan for them moving forward. Whether they're going to be a definite redshirt, whether they're going to be a guy that we're going to play 4 games, or a guy that we're going to utilize in a full-time capacity to use a year of eligibility. And those things probably won't be determined, until we get to game 1 prep. But, right now, I don't think they're necessarily worried about playing time as much as they are absorbing the information and figuring out where to go on the field and what to do when they get their repetitions, but certainly like the talent in our class.
David Brandt from the AP.
Hey, David.
Some of the older guys on defense have played for like 21 defensive coordinators during their career. How do you think this group is particularly adept at picking up stuff really quickly because they just had to over the years? What have you thought about some of those older guys and what they've kind of adapted? I know you weren't here, but kind of their progression, I guess.
Yeah, that's almost borderline hyperbole. It was almost accurate. But no, I think, you've got a very senior-laden, experienced group. And I believe, as you mentioned, this is their whatever number coordinator in the same amount of years. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're going to set the 3 technique to the tight end, you're setting a 3 technique to the tight end. There's just a bunch of different ways to call it. If you're going to play cover 2, it's cover 2. I'd say it's more the ability to adapt to the language maybe than necessarily the scheme. Now, certainly the things Coach Shoup does will be a little bit different than Coach Grantham or the guys, looking back down the line. So I'd say it's a combination of, understanding the language and the verbiage, and then, certainly grasping onto the new concepts, going from 3 down to 4 down, some of the different things we're doing on the back end. So certainly that flexibility and ability to adapt year after year after year has boded well for them.
Coach Steve Robertson with genespage.com. Back to the redshirt question, how do you plan to manage that 4-game availability? Is it something where you go in saying we definitely want to play young guys in this game, or do you bank those for injuries and kind of based on team needs, or do you even know at this point?
We definitely have a plan, and I think the first thing that needs to be kind of addressed is we're not going to play them if they haven't earned a right to play. So you earmark a certain number of games that they're going to be activated and be on the travel roster and have a chance to go in the game. Well, we're not just going to put them in if they're not better than the 2 or the 3 at that position. So the first thing is they've got to earn the right to step on the field with their performance, because it's not just something we're going to hand them something and say, well, you're going to play in the game when you're not better, because I don't think that is something that benefits team morale. When you're just throwing a freshman in there when you got guys that are older that are better than them. But certainly we've looked at a model of, if they have earned a right to play and we're going to get them in the game, 2 of the first 4, 1 of the last 8, and then certainly down the line, hopefully there's multiple postseason games to have them, have an opportunity to play in those games. That's our initial thought process, but certainly there'll be, ongoing discussions as, injuries occur and, guys, show that they deserve to be on the field.
Got Joey Jones is your special teams coordinator now. He's obviously a lot more useful than just the special teams aspect. How do you kind of use his set of eyes within practice, and do you kind of use him as a additional evaluator when you're not in special teams periods?
Yeah, we've asked Coach Jones kind of when it's non-special teams drills to kind of walk around and make notes and observations of things that are happening in the offensive and defensive phases, and I think that's also the benefit. I believe we have 4 ex-head coaches on staff. Coach Bryner, Coach Shoup, Coach Jones, Coach Hudspeth, and as a second-time head coach, and like anything, you don't know everything, and when you can fall back on the experience of those guys, I think that benefits everybody.
Kind of along those same lines, you've got a position battle going on at punter. Just what have you seen from those guys so far in camp?
Yeah, we you're getting through a couple of days of the installation of punting, and we're seeing a good operation. The guys are getting it off in good time. I feel good about the protection. For both of them, it's just going to be a matter of consistency moving forward. They both have moments. They both have flashes. They're both striking the ball pretty well. It'll ultimately come down to consistency with those guys.
Back here, behind the big camera.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Samaria with WJTV. With you all being ranked right now going into the preseason, has that added some hype in the locker room or on the field during camp?
Hype and confidence are two things that I don't worry about with the team. We are a very confident group, and I think for good reason. We've earned the right to be confident. But, in our initial team meeting, way back when, 10 days ago, we addressed it. I mean, we hit it head on, the preseason ranking and what it means. And, I've said it before, if they're keeping score, we want to be first. But obviously, the ranking at the end of the season matters more than the ranking at the first. But the biggest thing is that we're not competing against an opponent. We're competing against a standard. So if our level of preparation, effort, and execution is changing weekly based on who we're playing, then we're going to be in trouble. If we're competing against a standard in everything that we do, then I think on a weekly basis you're going to see a more consistent football team. So I'm happy that we're 18th. I wish we were first, but certainly that ranking isn't going to mean anything when we tee off on the first.
Hey, Coach. Tom Ebel from WCBI Sports in Columbus.
Yep.
A guy like Marcus Murphy, he started in the spring as a safety. I think you mentioned that he's going to be experimenting with different positions. Has that been the same thing this fall? Has he been in multiple? I know we've seen him a couple times with the defensive guys in the fall, but have you placed him in any offensive spots or anything?
No offensive spots just as yet. Certainly Marcus's track record as a playmaker on that side of the ball is very well documented, and for good reason. Right now, him being a mid-year got him a little bit of a head start. We're working with him at the nickel position, working him a little bit of safety, and certainly he's going to be a factor in the return game as well. So as he continues to progress in his understanding and his level of execution increases in those positions, certainly down the road, him playing some offensive snaps isn't out of the realm of possibility either. We'd like to do it, but what I don't want to do is inhibit or stun his growth as a defensive player and a special teams guy when he's got too much on his plate, then he's not excelling at anything. So we want to give the kid the best opportunity to be successful.
Other questions? All right.
That's it.
We'll have Coach Getz shortly.
Awesome. Hail State. Enjoy your day.
Our next coach enters his first season with the program. He served the past 2 seasons as the wide receivers coach for the Green Bay Packers. Offensive coordinator and wide receivers coach, Luke Getsy.
Hello, thanks for having me. Quickly, just kind of give you a quick rundown of what's going on with us. We're right in the thick of the installation period for us. We've got a bunch of them in, so I'd say, a good portion and a good chunk of the offense is in, and guys have done a really nice job. I think from where we are now to where we finished spring, tremendous growth. The guys this summer did a great job of getting their bodies ready, getting their minds ready, and when they came to camp, offensively, these guys were ready to rock and roll. I think, up front, setting the tone. Those guys are a physical bunch. They've done a great job of really establishing our identity through camp, and then as you go through the back end of the perimeter and receivers, the tight ends, and running backs, everyone's done a really nice job of progressing in a fashion that we're really excited about. We think we're in a really good place. We have the scrimmage later on today will be a good test to see guys competing. And so, but for where we're at right now, I feel really good. And I think we're on the right path to, getting off to a really fast start.
Questions, so we'll get a mic to you. Please state your name and affiliation as well.
Coach Steve Robertson from Gene's Page. Kind of give us an overview, maybe the newcomers, guys that are new to the program or available to the program, and what your expectations are for them.
Okay, just starting with the quarterback, Jalen's done a really nice job of grasping the offense for a young guy, for a young quarterback. We're really excited about where he can take where his future is headed. He's off to a really good start. Heading to the tight end position, a couple young guys there, Spivey and Brad, have done a great job of. Again, those guys are really big guys, and when they walk in the room, they just fit into SEC football right away. So that part of it is really exciting, and then Coach Hudd's done a great job of getting those guys ready to play. The mental part of it they've grabbed on really well, and it's fun to see those guys running around. Up front, Dollar Bill and Cam have really stood out. Their size, their athleticism is really strong. Again, those two have bright futures. We're excited about them. And heading outside the receivers, Steven being the junior college transfer, we finally got an opportunity to see him out there a little bit as he continues to get healthy. He's shown some really good flashes of things we can get excited about, and Wop kind of the same thing. And Cam Gardner has been a pleasant surprise. We kind of switched him over to receiver in the summertime, and he's a really bright kid and fun to have in the room, and excited to see what his future can lie to. So I think offensively, the newcomers that have come to camp, they've come ready to go, and they took advantage of the summer, getting their bodies in shape to handle the kind of competition that our defense presents us every day. So I'm excited. I think the young group of guys are going to be something that we'll be able to be excited for a few years down the road.
Brian Haydad, Super Talk Mississippi. Is there an awareness in your group in the wide receiver group, that's the group that people are watching and saying, hey, if Mississippi State's really going to take a step forward this year, they've got to get better wide receiver play?
I would say no. I think they're just a focus group right now, and the competition is there too. So it's kind of bringing out the best in everybody. That group has gotten better every single day. I mean, I think they were a group that when we walked out of spring, I don't think everybody had a very good grasp of what we were doing. Like I said, they, as much as any group on the offense, really did an outstanding job. Coach Paroli got their butts in shape, and man, they look faster. The guys have really done a great job of paying attention in the meetings and applying it to the field, and taking the fundamentals that we talk about in the meeting room and in the individual periods, and they are applying them to the practice film. So I'm extremely excited about their progress. I think that they're just a focus group. They're all in competitions with themselves, and then again, there's multiple people at each position, so that helps. There's no complacency going on in that room at all. So I think everyone's playing a little bit better each and every day, and but the pressure of feeling like that's on that group, I think that we put the pressure on ourselves in that group to say, this team is going to flow how we flow, and our mentality is going to it's going to depend on our success. So.
Logan Lowry, Daily Journal. I know Guidry wasn't able to do a whole lot during the spring, but how beneficial was it to get him and Wap in there, and just how much did that speed up their progression?
Oh, that's huge. I mean, that early enroll, that was huge. You know, those two guys, not only just their presence and what they do when they get on, they're such natural football players or football guys, and it helps the other guys in the room. And then, but for them alone, you know, Wap's body is transformed. So is Stevens. I mean, he gained 20 pounds, you know, over the time. So we were able to get their bodies ready to play in this league. And then the mental part of it, that's, you know, getting actual go out and experience it. You know, Wap got that in the spring. Steven didn't. But, you know, now Steven's getting through that right now. And, you know, that early enroll is huge for anybody. And to get that experience, I think that's the reason why they're able to have so much success early on here in camp.
David Brandt with the AP. Nick Fitzgerald had talked a little bit about how he thought this offense, one of the focuses would be to stretch it a little more vertically, try to get downfield. With the receivers and everything, I mean, what goes into teaching vertical routes? I mean, I know obviously speed and stuff like that, but is there more to it than that? What do you have to do to stretch the field?
Well, I think, you know, anytime it's important. Anytime you're putting an offense together, you have to put a plan. Okay, how are we going to stretch them vertically? How are we going to stretch them horizontally, right? So as you're putting your plans together and you put an offense together and you're building your installations, you have to have a little bit of that in your plan. So then now after you put that plan together, now you have to go out and practice it. And how do we practice it? You know, that's a big part of our individual period, our routes on air, things like that. So we're training the throw, we're training the catch, the different types of catches that you have to make when you're down the field. And then you get into the team or the going against an opponent or our defense, and then that goes back to the installation. You have to be able to run the football, you have to be able to protect, you have to be able to play action, and then to be able to throw the ball down the field. It's not there's not very many teams that can just catch the ball from center and just throw it deep all game long. I mean, the success of this offense has been because they've had the leading rusher in the conference, and then that's helped the passing game, being able to throw the ball down the field, because it's creating matchups. And if you have your best player against one of the other opponents and it's just one-on-one, you feel really good about those opportunities. And we want to create as many of those opportunities as possible. And if we don't run the ball well, then they're going to have two on our one best matchup. And so I think running the football makes more people around the box, and it creates more isolation on the outside. And then again, now we fall back to our training, and that's, you know, the quarterbacks learning how to throw the ball down the field, because it's a very difficult throw. And if you don't practice it, you're not going to be very good at it. And it's something we've stressed since we've gotten here. And the last part of it is, I think it's the mentality of the play caller. And you guys know Coach Moorhead's an aggressive guy, and the situation's not going to dictate his personality. He's going to dictate that. So,
Coach uses the tagline "good to great" as kind of a vision for this program. What does that mean to you, and what is the balance there between kind of setting up a foundation for a 5-year plan, but also putting all of that in now, since this roster has high expectations for itself?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we're doing. I mean, this culture is changing every single day, and, you know, in the offensive room, you know, we focus on the fundamentals. So the very first thing that we've done in our meetings is we've taken a step back and we've made it about the fundamentals. And so myself and the other coaches are standing in front of the offense, and we're talking about the fundamentals. We're not talking about the play. So the very first unit meeting that we have is we're talking about the fundamentals of catching the football, or fundamentals of ball security, fundamentals of run blocking, pass blocking. So we're taking care of the fundamentals first that we can build off of. It's not about the play. It's about how we execute. And that's part of the good to great, because if we do those things really good and they turn into really great, then the plays end up executing really great. And so it's a foundation that we're building with these guys, and we've taken it, you know, like Coach has always said, we're building this thing on rock, not on sand.
Hi, Coach. Andy Lee with WTVA TV in Tupelo. Obviously, you had a front row seat the last couple of years to one of the best to ever throw a football. I know you're not the quarterback's coach, but is there anything that you learned from Aaron, or you observed from Aaron, that you bring into your quarterbacks, or is he just kind of does something you can't teach?
Well, he does a lot of things you can't teach. That is fact. He is a very special player, but there was a lot of benefit of being around him the last 4 years. You know, the way his approach with his teammates, the way he practices, the way he leads, and all that stuff we've brought here, and that I've brought here, and I've you know, and Coach Briner and I have worked really well together in implementing all the successes that Joe has had, plus, you know, some of this other stuff that I believe and that will help us be better too. So Aaron has been instrumental in my coaching career and learning how to coach guys that, one, you know, he leads by example every single day. You know, and my example that I, you know, expressed to the team was, here's a guy who's all-pro, all-world, best player in the league, and we're in walkthroughs up in Green Bay, and he takes every single rep. So the first group's coming in, the second group's coming in. He doesn't know. He took every single rep because it's in his mentality. He wants to make sure everybody's on the same page that he is. And so when you have someone that great practicing practice habits like that, that's something that, you know, I could bring for sure every single day here.
Coach, Steve Robertson from the GP. Nick Fitzgerald has rushed for over 2,000 yards as a starting quarterback here at Mississippi State. I know Moorhead has talked about being a little more balanced. Ideally, how much would you like to see your quarterback run the football maybe in a given season?
Well, it's a special talent that he has. So we'd be ignorant to not notice that and be aware of that. And so that's definitely going to be a part of our game plans. It has to be. He's a really good runner with the football, and he's tough as nails. But the defense is going to dictate, you know, what we do. We're gonna game plan every single week, and we're going to find the best ways to get those matchups and opportunities to get him the ball. And he's going to be throwing it, he's going to be running it, and he's going to be making decisions at the line of scrimmage that maybe he didn't have to do before. So we're going to put a lot of stress on him, and he's shown the ability to do so. He's a really smart guy, bright guy, and extremely talented, not just running, but throwing the football too. So as in every team can stand up here and say, hey, we'll go as where our quarterback takes us. And Nick, we're lucky to have him because I think he's a guy who can do a lot of things. He's a dual threat for sure. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate you.
All right, our next coach has coordinated units to top 25 rankings in total defense in 5 out of the last 7 seasons. He enters his 16th year as a defensive coordinator. Mississippi State defensive coordinator and safeties coach, Bob Shoup.
Hi, guys. Thanks for being here today. You know, just to kind of give you just a 1 minute about the team so far. It's very, very evident, you know, that the guys, you know, worked hard this summer. They've come to camp in shape. We've practiced real well. We've got, you know, a lot of veteran leadership on the defensive side, so I'm very fortunate, and we're very fortunate in that respect. And those guys have done a great job through the first 7 or 8 days here, you know, setting the pace, setting the standard, you know, the championship standard that Coach talks about. Looking forward to tonight. You know, we've got a scrimmage tonight. 3 weeks from today, obviously, we open up against Stephen F. Austin. So, you know, tonight when the coaches aren't out there barking at them and you were off to the side and they've got to communicate with one another and do their thing, you know, we'll learn a little bit more about our unit and our team tonight. So with that, any questions?
Coach Steve Robertson from Gene's Page. Secondary-wise, how do you feel right now about your personnel and about their development thus far?
Yeah, we've had a pretty good camp so far. I mean, we've got several players that have played a lot. At the corner position, Cam Dantzler, Jamal Peters, and Chris Rayford have played a lot. And Tyler Williams and Mo Smitherman have had really good camps as well, and have put themselves in the mix, to compete for playing time. At safety of John Abram and Mark McLaurin, who are real veterans, and create as good a tandem at safety as there probably is in the league, and maybe even greater than that. And we have to establish some depth there. But I've been pleased with Stephen Adegoke and C.J. Morgan have really stepped up and done a good job during camp. And London Craft and Landon Guidry have done a good job as well. And the nickel position, Brian Cole, is a guy who redshirted last year and obviously transferred from Michigan. Played primarily on the offensive side of the ball. But he had a really good spring. He's picked it up right where he left off and has been really solid. But there's good competition at that nickel position, in that you got Capri Landers, right behind him, and Marcus Murphy there too. So we feel like we've got some pretty good depth there. Everybody talks about the depth on the D line, but I think we've got good depth, and we got to continue to develop that depth over the next 3 weeks.
To piggyback on the safeties thing, that they were kind of all over the field last year. They were allowed to do a lot of different things. They kind of created a lot of havoc in the back end. How are you planning to use safeties, and will they have that kind of freedom to make offenses think?
When you say created havoc, I assume you mean in a good way, not a bad way. I think when you look at last year's team, these guys. I've said it before. These guys, especially the older players like Mark, have had 5 defensive coordinators and really 4 or 5 safety coaches in the last several years. So it's only so many ways you can do things. But at the same time, I have veteran players back there who kind of the negative is really a positive too, because they know the game. They can talk the game, and in the meeting room, it's not like talking to a high school kid. It's like talking to a veteran football player right there, and we have those type of discussions. So, those guys. I've said this before. When you talk about a defensive scheme, rather than recruit players to fit a scheme, you try to tailor the scheme and alter your scheme to what your players are capable of doing. So we're still in the process of identifying what the guys' strengths and weaknesses are, and that's kind of an ongoing thing. But to answer your question, I think John Abram and Mark McLaurin, Brian Cole are real playmakers, and I use the term interchangeable parts. They're versatile enough to play, different positions and do different things. And what is non-negotiable about our scheme, our style of play, if you will, is, we want to be, it's built on, I always say, relentless pursuit and never-ending pressure. And pressure means bringing those guys and hopefully creating havoc. It's not, the SEC and where we want to get, it's not about being a bend but don't break unit. It's not about read and react. It's about attack. And that's those guys' mindset as well. So I think they've embraced that.
David Brandt from the AP. Kind of building on, you mentioned the 4 or 5 defensive coordinators for some of these guys that they've played under. You've done this for a while. Have you ever encountered a veteran group that kind of knew so much about, just different types of defenses and terminology? Has it kind of been an interesting group to
Yeah, it has. And, I found it to be very refreshing. I came, obviously, you come here and you don't know the guys, and you get to know them, and you hear about their personalities, you watch the film. It's been kind of a clean slate, but they're very, the blue-collar work ethic of our team is really, true. I think the kids the student athletes on our roster, both offensively and defensively, are tough, mentally tough. They're smart. They're smart, tough football players with a great work ethic, and that lends itself to success in the SEC, the Big Ten or whatever conference. I've been in situations where I've inherited defenses that didn't have that type of leadership and veteran presence. And it's funny. I was just thinking about that the other day. The one that I did inherit that was very similar to this was my first defense at Penn State in 2014, and they encountered a little bit of a same situation in that, you thought of the continuity because Coach Paterno had been there so long, and then Bill O'Brien, and then Coach Franklin. So there wasn't, there hadn't been a lot of head coaches, but when I was there, they had in the 4th year players had 4 different defensive. I was their 4th different defensive coordinators. They had Tom Bradley, and then they had Ted Roof, then they had John Butler, and then they had me. So it was sort of that same situation. So those guys could talk the game a little bit, and many of those players who are upperclassmen were really mature, and you could have those type of discussions with them, and they've gone on to great success at the next level. And maybe it's a good thing, but that defense went on to be the #1 defense in the country in run defense. So let's see what happens.
Coach Andy Lee with WTVA
Hi.
TV in Tupelo. Hello. I know he's a zygote as far as his football development's concerned, but Jet Johnson, what have you seen out of him so far?
What's zygote? I assume that means he's a young player?
Yeah.
I enjoy talking to Jet. Jet, it's funny because the young players get a handful of reps at the end of each series of plays during the course of practice, and some of them come out on the field and they got big eyes and they're jumping around, and he kind of steps in there like a veteran. He's not, doesn't appear to be, the stage doesn't appear to be too big for him, and by no means is he ready, for prime time. And today will be a big step in his development as he'll get some reps out there. But he has an opportunity to learn behind Errol and Tim Washington, and at that position also we have a junior college guy named Shamar Kilby-Lane. So we have good depth at that position. So it's not necessary that Jet come out and necessarily be Brian Urlacher today or anything along those lines. But you could tell that he gets the game of football. You could tell that he's a good athlete. I mean, he was a guy who played football and basketball. He was a quarterback till he was in 9th or 10th grade. So he has a command. He has a presence about him. Like any freshman, I'm quite sure when he gets his reps in practice, his heart's pounding. I told him when he gets out there, take a nice deep breath and do your thing. And thus far, he's done a good job.
Coach, it seems like the safety position is real susceptible to the targeting rule. How do you kind of coach the proper strike zone into your guys?
Yeah.
How do you rep that out to avoid those penalties?
Well, I mean, you hit it. I mean, the safety, the game is not really like because of all the RPOs, because of the down the field pass game, there's so many violent collisions that do occur in the game of football. And the first and most important thing, we're always studying best practices. We're trying to, like everybody else, take the head out of the game and teach techniques and fundamentals that are safe for our players and, functional, for the whole unit. So first thing we always talk to our guys about is taking your head out of tackling. We're a shoulder tackling team. We talk about tackling with the shoulder pad or the frontal part of the shoulder pads on the rise, sky in the eyes, seeing what you hit, not leading with the crown of your helmet right there. And then we talk about tackling with the chest on the rise in an upward moving, fashion there. So you're using your, squat and power clean muscles, ripping your arms up through the ball carrier, ripping appropriately right there, and making the tackle with your shoulder and your hips and your legs and things like that. So, we do a tremendous amount of, we start in very close quarters. We do a lot of close quarters tackling, and then we broaden it out and expand it out. And I think in those bang plays about the targeting piece, it's really important that the guys understand going for the football. I mean, there's going to be collisions that occur, but we're not out there in any way, shape, or form. And you have to understand the tackling areas. Like I always use the term strike zone. It's from the the chest or the numbers, to the knees right there. And the other issue too that happens nowadays, and I've sort of studied this over the last couple of years, is because of that now you're seeing more shoulder injuries, labrum injuries. You used to hear of a dislocated or separated shoulder. Now you hear the terms torn labrum. And I think because the guys, when they tackle, my crusade is when the guys tackle, they wrap their arms around a ball carrier rather than rip their arms up through a ball carrier. So, we not only spend time teaching the best practices with regard to safety in the head, but trying to, regard the best practices with regard to the, shoulders and things along those lines. And we have a very step-by-step teaching progression with regard to our tackling that we teach our players.
Hey, Coach. Tom Bevel from WCBI here in Columbus. Another one of those young guys on defense, Marcus Murphy. Joe Moorhead had mentioned that he's playing some safety, put in some nickel spots. What have you seen from him in terms of see him ultimately ending up on defense?
Yeah. He's obviously he's a local hero. He's been a state champion. He was a leader in his program. We're very, very, very happy that Marcus and Jet are part of our first class since we've been here. Marcus and I specifically coach him. He's played some free safety. He's primarily playing the nickel position. He's fast. He's competitive. He's tough. All those things. He's still learning a little bit about the game of football. On the defensive side, because he's primarily a high school quarterback where they'd snap the ball and he'd run. But you could see there's the old saying, I don't know what it is, but he's got it, and he's got it. He's a playmaker. he's taken the next step, because in the spring, we'd always kind of joke in the film room that he would do everything wrong but end up making a play. And now he's taken the next step in that progression. He's trying to do everything right. And sometimes you got to take one step back to go 2 steps forward. So in his focus to try to do every step and everything mechanically and technically right, these first 7 or 8 days, he's been good, but he probably hasn't made as many plays as he did in the spring, or the plays he made were flash plays. But, with the scrimmage tonight, my gut tells me that he's probably going to be a guy who makes a few plays out there. He's one of those guys who I think it's never the arena's never too big for him. I think he probably plays better when the coaches and stand behind him, telling him, make sure you're outside the line, make sure you're this, make sure you're that. And I think he's gonna, I think he's got a tremendously bright future in the long term. And I know at some point during the course of this year, he's gonna make significant contributions to us on special teams, maybe as a return guy or covering kicks and punts, and get in the mix somewhere in the secondary, whether it's at nickel or safety.
You've been in this game for a long time.
Jeez, you keep saying that.
Sorry. But where do Jeffrey Simmons and Montez Sweat rank in the tandems you've had on a defensive line, and what have you learned about them that you didn't see in film from last season?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't coached a game yet, so it's kind of with these guys. So that in that respect, it's hard to say. But you put it on the film, and it doesn't take long to identify who 94 and 9 are. I mean, or you watch practice, or you watch them work out for that matter. I mean, Jeffrey's the alpha dog. He's really the undisputed leader of the defense and maybe the team in some ways too. Again, another local guy, Sip Boy, who he's really fun to coach. He practices hard, he competes hard. He's, to be a great defensive team requires intensity, focus, attention to detail, and he has all those things. He's strong. He moves incredibly well for his size, and obviously, he's had a great career thus far. We have high expectations for him this year, and he's going to have a very bright future. Tez, Tez is a little bit, when I got here, I was a little concerned that he might make the decision to go to the next level. I think he made a wise decision in that I just don't think he's played enough football yet, and I think as a business investment, he made himself a lot of money probably by staying. Now, again, he's a first-team All-League returning player, and that's last year, and this is this year. But my observations in him have been he worked as hard this off-season as any player in the program as far as lifting, running. He's in great shape. He can rush the quarterback, and through 6 or 7 practices, he's probably been one of the most dominant players on the field. I think he's very driven to have a great year. He's got a positive attitude. He's got a good work ethic, and he's very, very, very competitive.
Coach, you mentioned Shamar Kilby-Lane didn't get the benefit of the spring practices. He's got to be kind of a quick study. What have you seen from him, and what are your expectations for him this fall?
Yeah. Shamar's done a good job, actually. I came in, I didn't get to know him a lot during the recruiting process because, the December 20th date came, the early signing date, and he kind of committed here without visiting at that point, and there wasn't a lot of film on him from junior college. I knew he went to Florida State and contributed a little bit early, mostly on special teams. And so I can't say, and then he didn't go through the spring, so it's not as if I had, some real strong relationship with him. But I have enjoyed, throughout the course of the summer and throughout the course of camp, getting to know him. His story getting here is an interesting one, and I think football's important to him. And I think between Coach Lukabu and our staff, we're going to provide him the support to be successful, as a man, certainly as a student and as a player. And as a player, he's pretty good. He's got good instincts. He's a little behind, a little bit like any of the first-year players because the terminology is a little bit new to him. But you can see that he's played at this level, whether it's at Florida State or in junior college. And you can see that he gets the game, His issues also at the Florida State and junior college level were injuries, so he's got to stay healthy. So thus far during the course of practice, most of the drills have been non-tackling drills, so we've got to keep him healthy. But I heard Coach Jones praising him, in some type of kick coverage drill yesterday, and I know Coach Lukabu and myself have been very, very, very pleased with his progress so far. You're just passing it back and forth.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk in the spring about Errol Thompson kind of growing into being an alpha dog, a signal caller kind of guy for this defense. Has he shown growth in that regard in these first 2 weeks of camp?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We just talked about the secondary and we talked about the D-line. the linebackers are kind of a little bit overlooked. I don't know that we have the depth at linebacker that maybe we have at some of those other positions, but what we have there are really pretty good players. I mean, Errol, Leo Lewis, and Willie Gay are all upper level SEC type players. And Errol, we've challenged to take that role. He understands. He, Mark, and John do a lot of the communication piece for us, and I think he enjoys that part of it. He's a good study. He's composed. He doesn't get rattled. He stepped in, and last year when what was 11's name, Dez got hurt, and I thought he played really pretty well. I think he was the leading freshman tackler in the SEC or something like that. I think got all those stats now, but and to me, I think he's ready to take the next step. I think he's earned the respect of his teammates. I'm not sure that he's an alpha dog like John Abram or Jeffrey Simmons are personality-wise, but when he gets in there, he's a good commander. He communicates clearly, he communicates loudly, and probably more importantly than that, once the ball turns over, he can play the game pretty good. So he can thump you, and he's a good tackler. He plays tackle to tackle. He can play sideline to sideline, and for a big guy, he moves pretty good. He's a good blitzer too. Just back to him now. Nah.
What's the next step for this group of cornerbacks? What's the next
Corner?
step? Yeah, what's the next step in their development to be guys that are coming away with more interceptions as opposed to just passes broken up?
Well, passes broken up are still good too. But, last year what they were asked to do a lot of times is they played a lot of press technique and what really amounts to almost man-to-man from a press alignment. Now I say this in zone defense, and they played a lot of what are called match concepts. In those type of concepts, you're going to have bodies on bodies, but your vision, really isn't on the quarterback. So that, there might be less completions or a lower completion percentage, but there might also be less interceptions. And we have combinations of both. And those guys have really done a great job embracing that. I think through the first 6 or 7 practices, we probably have 15, 16 interceptions. I think we've had 4 one day, 3 several days, which is, again, it's good for the defense, not good for the offense. Then other days are good for the offense and not good for the defense. But, Cam Dantzler has good hands and has played the ball. He's long, athletic, and is good. Jamal Peters, the same way. He's played the ball well. He's come away with a couple good interceptions. I think Tyler Williams had an interception or 2. So, those guys are embracing the fact that they're in positions that just aren't press corner positions. They're having vision on the quarterback, and Buck does a great job coaching those guys to break on the football and catch the ball. Buck's one of the best to play the game and go attack it at the highest point and do those type of things. So, there's a combination of all those things. And I think when you recruit a corner, you're looking for the same skills that Coach Getsy or the offensive staff are looking for in a receiver. A guy who it looks like a shooting guard, has length and good ball skills, and those guys all have those. Those guys were asked to play basically bump and run coverage almost on every snap last year. So when you reroute at the line of scrimmage, your back's turned to the quarterback a lot. And unless you're Superman, you're not going to get a lot of intercept. You're doing your job within the framework of the package, and he did a very, very good job at that. But a lot of times your back's turned to the ball and you're covering your player, but there's going to be less and less, interceptions. Where we, in some of the things that we'll do is, we'll zone out and we'll have more vision on the quarterback and have more sets of eyes looking at the quarterback. And in that case, there may be little windows, but theoretically you're seeing the ball a little bit better and breaking on those things. And we'll do both, and we do both. Come on, you guys, you got some, come on. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. See you in a couple weeks.
All right, our final coach we bring up after he has served as the head coach at South Alabama. He's in his first season at Mississippi State. Special teams coordinator, Joey Jones.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. First of all, I want to say very excited about being here at Mississippi State. You know, it's been just want to tell everybody I'm very thankful for this opportunity, the opportunity Coach Moorhead gave me to be here at Mississippi State, and I really want to thank him for that. I do want to say one thing about Coach Moorhead from the beginning is that, you know, in all my years of coaching, I think that there are a few guys that are elite in the coaching world. I think there's a lot of good coaches out there. A lot of guys do a great job. To me, in my opinion, there's probably like 3 to 5% of the population in coaching that are elite. There's no doubt in my mind that Coach Moorhead is one of those guys, and he's just been just a tremendous guy to work for. Just a guy that understands football, understands motivation of young men. He understands how to recruit. He understands how to organize practices. He has all the boxes that you check. He's very high in all those categories, so I want to thank him for that. And then, you know, as far as us as a special teams unit, our goal is simply to be the number one SEC, number one in the SEC in special teams, and I think that that's a very important facet of what we're doing. We got to understand that we want to be the best, and we got to approach every day like that. And my goal is to get our guys to understand it and get it done in practice, and therefore to get done in games. So I'll take questions from there.
Hey, Coach. Tom Evell from WCBI here in Columbus. Both Coach Moorhead and Coach Shoup had mentioned Marcus Murphy may see some significant time on special teams. What have you seen from him so far? You know, where do you see him? Do you see him on both kick return and punt return, or maybe one or the other?
Well, all the above. We are actually working him in both areas. Very good athlete, got a great attitude, comes to work every day, and a young guy that's really trying to learn what we're trying to teach him, and I expect him to be on the field for sure.
Coach Steve Robertson with Gene's Page, the punter battle with, you know, this year it's a little different deal with Logan Cook out of the program now. How do you see it shaking out, or does that competition going to linger into the season, or what are your thoughts?
You know, we're not going to make any decisions here till at least the following weekend after our second scrimmage. I think there's a lot of evaluations to be done, a lot of data to obtain. You know, we chart them every day, and the guy with the best stats is going to be the guy that's going to be the kicker. And so I think they've both done well. Tucker's gotten much more consistent, and Cody's always been consistent, and they both want the job, and but we'll see here in a couple weeks.
I asked Coach Moorhead earlier about how he kind of uses your eyes outside of the special teams periods in practice. What do you kind of look for in offense and defense periods, and what kind of insight do you try to give Coach Moorhead to help him with this squad?
Well, one thing he asked me to do during practice is walk around and look at every athlete and evaluate them. Where can they fit on a special team? You know, I go through every cornerback, every safety, every linebacker, and on down the list, and try to find a guy that maybe, you know, that we've overlooked, because sometimes you kind of think you know who the players are, but till you walk around and look at each guy and evaluate, and I've never had that opportunity to do that. But it's been very helpful, and we've gotten, you know, 3 or 4 guys that weren't on our list that we put on the list, and so that are fighting for jobs. And so I continually doing that. And then the second part of your question, I think, you know, Coach Moorhead is very, you know, open to suggestions, and he's a smart man. He understands what he wants to do, but you know, he takes input from us, and so we certainly try to help in any way we can. All we're trying to do as assistant coaches is help him do well and make him look good, and that's my job and that's my role.
It's kind of rare to come into a situation where you're replacing a long snapper that got drafted in the NFL, but that's kind of what you face with Hunter Bradley being gone. But with that being said, who are the candidates working there, and how's that competition going?
Well, Joel Baldwin and Raymond Freeman are the 2 that are working there now. We'll bring a couple more snappers in when school gets here. Right now, they're the top 2. It's a real close battle. Joel got in here a few days late because of going with ROTC and got in here on that Monday. But it's a good battle going right now. But you know what? I think we've got 2 good ones. I know we had one that got drafted last year, and I understand he's a great one. But we got some guys that we feel like we can count on right there. So I don't think it's going to be much of a drop-off from the standpoint of, you know, what we had last year. We got 2 guys who can do it, and so I feel very comfortable there.
Pretty different situation at place kicker. Guy started last year back, and he's just a sophomore. What's a point of emphasis for him? What's the next step for him in his development?
Well, I think the key is he's competing right now with Jordan Lawless, and they've had some great battles out there at this point. You know, Jace is a great person, comes from a great family, was fortunate enough to meet his family at the spring game. You know, he's the kind of guy you want. He's very conscientious about, you know, what he does, how he kicks, and had a great year last year, and he's worked the whole summer long to be the very best, and so we got competition there. You know, Jordan's pushing him. More.
Coach, kickoff specialist, who are the candidates there?
You know, right now we've got Scott Goodman, who came in as a true freshman, is looking very good. He has a lot of confidence and has a strong leg, and you know, doing some really good things right now. And Jason is really kind of our backup kicker at that spot. But Scott's come in and done very well. He's you know, you don't see many freshmen that come in there with confidence he's coming with, and he's also got some talent too. So that's certainly a plus.